seconds. So we're here for Ask the Coach, our Middle East special that is proudly sponsored by JobAdder. We've got Matt Gallivan here today by the skin of his teeth because we had a few technical issues. And I don't know, can anyone put in the chat if they've had technical issues getting in here as well? Because it's been a little bit dodgy this morning. I'm Angela Cripps, the MD of the Recruiting Gym. I'll get the rest of the coaches to introduce themselves in a moment. Let's explain how this works. We've been gathering questions, ones that the coaches are getting asked all the time over the last couple of weeks. And we're going to answer those questions today, all based around working in the Middle East. Now, if you have a question of the coaches, please put it in the chat. Click on the button that makes it a question, and we will tackle that for you as well. We've got 45 minutes. If for any reason you can't stay for that long, then vote on a question. And actually, that will then put that question further up the list, and hopefully it will get answered by the time that you leave. But if you can do the whole 45 minutes, then that's fantastic as well. We'd love to have you. Wonderful. I'm going to come to Emma Robinson first. Emma, while they're voting, while they're looking at the questions, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Emma Robinson. I am the Managing Director of Red Diamond. We set up our business back in 2009 in the Middle East. We have an office in the Middle East in Dubai and one here in the UK.
Fantastic. So yeah, lots of experience, coming up for 15 years there in the Middle East. That's wonderful. Nicky, you're on your way to the Middle East at the moment, I believe, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, yes, I'm actually in Greece at the moment and heading to Qatar in a couple of weeks to work with some clients. So I'm Nicky Davies. I am CEO of WAVA Global, and we develop leaders around the world and have a lot of clients in the Middle East. And we've been going for 19 years now.
Fantastic. Okay, so yes, all that work in the Middle East as well. And then our sponsors today, Matt Gallivan, thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Matt, never Matthew, only Matthew to my mum. So I'm Matt Gallivan. From JobAdder, I'm head of sales for EMEA. I've actually worked in previous roles with a lot of companies going into the UAE and the Middle East, and I have strong ties there myself. I was brought up by a Middle Eastern family and been to the region countless times, so know it well.
Fantastic. Now, I've only ever worked in Dubai, about 20-25 times, I think, there, but I am going to pass it over to the people that have been working there and that know it very, very well. As I said, we've got our questions. I'm going to start with number one, which is, how do I do business or do more business in the Middle East? So Nicky, I'm going to focus in on you, and if you'd like to take that one for us.
Sure, this is a great question, because what you want to do is look at your network. Look at your network. A lot of business is really about the people that we know and introductions to other people that they know. And so my first piece of advice would be to look to your network. We often forget that we have more connections than we actually think. And so you want to make best use of those connections. And if you've been working with a large organization, we have some global clients that we work with. They often have a regional office in the Middle East. So if you know a global organization really well, maybe you've worked with them, maybe you've done some recruitment for them, look to where they have a head office in the Middle East, because they'll very often have a head office there. And again, you can use the connections that you have in order to make that introduction for you. Building relationships is really important in any type of business, but particularly in the Middle East. And you want to be culturally sensitive to the people that you are interacting with. And what you're going to find is there's a real melting pot of nationalities in the Middle East. And so you might be working with an organization that has 40 different nationalities working together under one roof. So think about the background, the cultural background, the nationality of the people that you're dealing with. And you may find that you need to communicate a little bit more formally than you would in other parts of the world.
I'm smiling because I watched the I'm really into boxing, so the Tyson Fury conference yesterday. I had my head in my hands. He swore so much, and I'm like, you do realise where you are? That formality, again, different cultures. It's really important to take note of that, isn't it? And understand what you're dealing with and who you're dealing with before you start working there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I say, because there's so many different nationalities, don't assume that you're actually dealing with somebody who's a national from that country. You'll probably be dealing with a whole raft of people from all sorts of different places and countries. So you probably want to err on the side of being a little more formal than you normally would, because you can always get more friendly working from that place. But if you go the other way around, it's much more difficult to switch from coming in really friendly to then stepping into being more formal.
Yeah, you're right. You can't go backwards, can you? Matt, did you want to add something on there? I can see you.
Oh, no, it's absolutely culture. It is such a melting pot. And just to give some stats to back that up, if you look in the UAE, the population is around about 9.2 million, with only 1.4 million of those are actually Emiratis.
Yeah.
And then you've got 7.8 million who are from other nationalities, other cultures, who bring, who all bring their own elements to it. And I couldn't agree more, is that if you start formal and they respect, there's a lot of respect for the formalities out there, the formalities of business, of friendship, but be very aware of, where you are. This isn't the UK or the US. There's a lot of things there around how you greet people, public displays of affection. All these things are very, very much, they are, I say it's very different, but also it's very accommodating. So they do accommodate other nationalities and other. So it's just, I think it's a great place to be, because you get this wealth of experience from other cultures and businesses that all come together, and you find that in the Middle East more than anywhere. But I couldn't agree more than that. If you start with that level of respect, friendship builds off that, familiarity builds off that, and it's a great place to start a business relationship anyway.
Yeah, I think that's what shocked me, and I think it is the place in the world that has the most people that aren't actual nationals, isn't it? So if you start with that premise, so thank you for that. We have got a poll today, so during the time as well, if you want to be clicking on that, and we're just asking you, have you actually been to the Middle East or lived there in the past 5 years? Let's get a sense of the people that are here. If you're one of the 100 over on LinkedIn Live, do feel free to come and join us on Crowdcast for the full interaction experience. We'd love to have you here. Wonderful. Thank you so much for our answer to our first question. Let me do the done answering, and I'm going to come to the second one now, more focused for recruiters. So the next question, Emma, I'm going to pop you over. How do I find candidates for the Middle East? Nice wide sweeping question for you there, but everyone wants to know.
Yeah, so working in the Middle East is great fun to start with, and you're absolutely right, Nicky. The plethora of different nationalities and people that you'll get to deal with. The good news is it's really easy to find candidates in the Middle East. Using all your normal platforms that you use right now, probably all your job boards, LinkedIn, your own networks and that sort of thing. People in the Middle East are very open to networking with you, and it's rare that someone will ever turn you down if you directly approach them for a job. Although they're at least much more open to a conversation. I think one thing you've got to remember about places like the Middle East is that people go out there to work. So a lot of candidates and people like everybody sat on this this crowdcast today, you've not got your mum and your dad, you've not got your brothers and sisters around you, you don't have your normal friendship groups. So a lot of what you do is business related, even socially. So it's incredibly careful. You've got to be incredibly careful, I guess, to remember your own personal branding when you're in the Middle East. And that, from a candidate perspective, is really valuable, because you could be in a bar, you could be at a restaurant, you could be in a play gym with your kids, and you meet your next set of candidates. So networking is really, really good fun. And, you know, alongside the normal stuff that we do as recruiters, you know, every single step you take in your day-to-day life, if you're living in the Middle East and you breathe in the Middle East, there's an opportunity for a new candidate or a new client, whatever you're doing. Which sounds a little bit strange because, you know, you might go out with your friends this afternoon and you might talk business. The chances of you going out and talking business at a social event in the Middle East and the likelihood of you coming away with a job or a candidate is pretty likely.
Wow.
So it makes it a really exciting place, certainly for people like me, who's a very sociable individual, and not as bothered about, you know, spending hours on text messages and being a keyboard warrior. If you're the kind of person that likes to network, you'll make a fortune and you'll have a very rich candidate and client portfolio. We've always got to remember your personal brand.
I mean, that's unusual, and maybe that's what makes it stand out, that it's different, because nearly everywhere I've worked around the world and most other places, it's really tough to get a conversation going with a candidate and for them to be open when they're not looking. So if that's what makes that difference, and it's so much more enjoyable to do your job, isn't it, when you're in that situation. Nicky, what have you found with regards to the culture and the people being open to conversations, and certainly business conversations?
I really agree with Emma. You know, there's a lot of those conversations that happen sitting around the table and eating, having a meal with somebody. So just beware that, you know, your behavior is being watched and noted. So if you are looking for a job, you want to make sure that in those sorts of environments, that you are actually behaving in a culturally sensitive way, because you're going to have those conversations frequently. They are very small countries in many ways, and people know each other really, really well, small communities. So you're bound to have these conversations naturally if you're there already. One of the things that you probably want to keep an eye out for is the amount of hospitality there is. I have found, and I'm sure you have too, Angela, that the hospitality, the generosity of people in the Middle East, you get invited into all sorts of settings and all sorts of family settings as well, which is wonderful. I've been to many friends' weddings that have been held in those countries, and it's a wonderful opportunity to actually be a part of something that's really intimate. But you'll be surprised at how many business conversations come up in those social settings, just like Emma said, all the time.
Yeah, it reminded me a little bit more of the Far East in that sense, where people are very open, and it's all about the food and the discussions in that way as well. Yeah, we're all nodding on that. So yeah, if you've got experience of that, feel free to share, because yeah, that's one of the things that I love as well, that people are very open in lots of different ways. Brilliant. Okay, Matt, I'm bringing you back in. We're going to question 3. Remember the polls there if you want to answer it. So we think of the Middle East as having lots of money. So what is the cost of living if you're going to be moving over there?
Yeah, just about that, I just want to say my favourite quote that I use all the time was actually taken from a Middle Eastern recruiter, which is, your network is your net worth. And they said that all the time. So just want to add that. I love that quote. So yeah, when we're looking at the Middle East, it's one of the things to be really clear about is it's a multitude of cultures and countries that make up this place. And when people say the Middle East, they often think of Dubai and the great things to have on there. But actually, you know, there's also places like Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt. And if you want to balance those, then actually Egypt and Tunisia, those kind of places, actually offer a much better cost of living comparison. So it's much cheaper to live in those places than it is for your Dubai. But that's exactly the same as everywhere else, right? So that's like saying if you're going to come to Europe and live in London, it's more expensive than if you live where I do in Cardiff. So those comparisons, you know, when you're looking at what you want to do out there, you need to really bear in mind is what is right for you. So, and everyone's an individual. The two big things that people go out there for, obviously, is some of the countries offer zero income tax, which, you know, I dream about. I get my payslip every month, and I hate looking at how much money they've taken off me. But, you know, to live in a country that has zero income tax means that you have much more control over your own money. The big things you're going to come into those equations for you, again, is what stage of life you're at. So accommodation is obviously a big one. If you've got kids, education is a big cost out there, whereas obviously in many other places it's free, and transport can often be expensive out there. And so just understanding how you're going to get around these cities, where do you want to live, if you can live in the centre, if you can live further out, just like many other places. But comparably, if you look at somewhere like London to Dubai or the UAE, you're probably looking around about 25% cheaper to live in those places than it is to live here. And that's because a lot of the oil revenue from those countries are reinvested back into the economy there, so they're not propped up by the taxpayers to fund a lot of those things. And so with a lot of other initiatives, you find that it is actually a lot cheaper there. However, and I ahead of this, I actually spoke to 4 or 5 friends who I've got living out there at the moment, and I said, look, it's great for me to go and get all these stats. In reality, you find it's cheaper. And they all said to a person, yes, it's cheaper, but I spend more money. Right. And I was like, walking through that, and they said, it's cheaper, the cost of living is cheaper, but I eat out more. I do more with my, he said, so I actually, the money that I should be saving and putting towards my pension, I don't, I spend it. Because there's much more opportunity to spend that money there. And so it all depends on, like the rest of life, in anything. But for recruiter fees, when we have a look at those kind of things, they're actually very similar, and I'm happy to be corrected here, but they're very similar to what the UK are offering in terms of everything from around a circa 20 to 25% of the salary. You're going to see in those fees, and then the bonus structures for salespeople are very similar. So you're going to see, your earning opportunity is about the same, but you're going to keep more of that money for it to become disposable income.
That's fantastic to hear. I saw the other coaches as soon as you said you spend more and going out every night. Emma, whereabouts did you live when you were living there?
So I lived in a couple of different places. So when I first went out there, it was just me and my husband. But when we left, there were more of us. So we started off in, and of course, recruiters, we like nice things in life, don't we? So I lived in Dubai Marina, which was my first property. My second property, when I earned some more money, was on the Palm. I then moved to a villa in the Springs, which is where all my community of friends and fellow mothers lived as well. So I will just touch upon one thing though, the cost of living from your biggest outgoing, without a shadow of a doubt, is your accommodation. And if you're thinking about moving out to the Middle East or you're coaching somebody in terms of moving out there, there's a couple of things to be aware of. At the minute, to live in any of those 3 places that I've just said, that are really nice places, and there are lots of other options as well today, but you're looking at an average of about £30,000 a year in rent for a 2-bedroom flat. So we can say London, we can say Cardiff, we can say Yorkshire. That's roughly what you're looking at if you're going to move to Dubai. And let's face it, a lot of people on this probably are considering Dubai, Saudi, Oman, Kuwait. They're the kind of the big 4 that people tend to, or that there's a lot of recruitment going on in, certainly at the minute. So you've got, if you think that your accommodation is going to be your biggest outlet, the other thing to note as well, it's customary to charge you in either 1 rent check or 2. So you need to have £30,000 up front, which nobody tells you about until you get there.
I didn't know that.
And before you know it, you're getting yourself a loan. Now so that's a very real thing to consider. If you've got a really flexible landlord and you've been there for a couple of years, they'll normally say it's fine in 4 checks or whatever. But that's something to be prepared for. Cost of living in terms of your everything else day to day, completely agree with everything Matt just said. But your disposable income and your expenditure outside of that, again, I go back to the point that I made at the beginning. Often people go out there either on their own or as a couple. And therefore, you've got to build up a network. And the only way to go and do that is to get out there and socialise. And it's such a sociable place. But let me tell you, you are spending a lot of money. Again, just to put it into context, a glass of wine that would cost you £6 in a pub in Yorkshire, you're looking at about £15-16. So there are some subtleties that will significantly impact your bank balance. So if you think you're going out there in your first year to earn a load of cash, pay off your mortgage, probably that's not going to happen in year one.
No.
Once you're embedded and you've got a network and you know people and you're feeling comfortable, then that's when you can start earning and probably sort of saving and being a bit more sensible, because you've got that bit out of your system. You also put on a lot of weight as well in your first year.
I found like with recruitment in general, everyone that started with me, and me as well, always put on 1.5 stone.
Yeah.
Being a recruiter, I don't know what it is, whether people have experienced that, but yeah, not helpful. Right, let's get Nicky back then for question 4. We've got, let's pop this up on things. I'd like to become a coach in the region. Can you, what top tips can you give me? So yes, obviously this is your forte as well, Nicky.
Yeah, there are so many opportunities in all of the Middle Eastern countries for coaching, because organizations recognize that they really need to bring in external coaches to work with their senior leaders, maybe their executive team as well, or even to do some team coaching with teams. What I'm seeing right now is that they've really embraced that whole idea of coaching and want to see it and drive it further down into the organization. So they're looking at creating coaching cultures. There's a lot of talk about coaching and mentoring and actually helping create these coaching and mentoring environments within the organization. And they know that we have an expertise that they don't have. So they're constantly looking for external coaches, particularly coaches that have some of that international experience. If you've actually worked in other countries or you've worked with people from other countries, that will really help you in this situation. They also want to know that you have a qualification, a meaningful qualification. So you want to make sure that your qualification has come from a well-known or recognized organization. For example, we're an ILM approved centre, so we deliver coaching qualifications as part of the ILM coaching and mentoring qualification framework. So you want to make sure that you've got a qualification that is well-known and recognised, and doing something like the ICF, the International Coaching Federation, accreditation to become an ACC accredited coach, or even, it doesn't matter if it's the European Coaching and Mentoring Council. If you've got some kind of accreditation from them, that really helps too. So lots of opportunities. Make sure you have the right qualification. And then again, just like setting up a business anywhere in the world, look to your network. Who in your network have those links within the countries that you would like to work within the Middle East, and reach out to those people and ask for those introductions. Lots and lots of opportunities there.
So if you could just say those qualifications, you said the ILM that you're part of, the ICF, was it?
The ICF, the International Coaching Federation. So the ILM is UK based. It's the largest leadership and management organisation within the UK and Europe, probably. So they deliver through their centres, and we're an approved centre, qualifications around coaching and mentoring as well as leadership and management. And then the ICF, the International Coaching Federation, they deliver qualifications through approved centres, and they also accredit coaches. So if you have done a coaching qualification and you're not sure whether you would be whether you could get accreditation from the ICF, you want to go on to the International Coaching Federation organisation's website and check whether your credentials could be put forward to get accredited by ICF. You can do the same thing with the European Coaching and Mentoring Council as well. The International Coaching Federation is recognised worldwide. The EMCC, which is the European version, is recognised worldwide, but obviously they've got European in the title. So you may want to think about that when it comes to looking at your credentials. But the other thing is really about reaching out to your network. If you've already got a great track record in coaching, they won't look so closely at your credentials. You know, if you think about Tony Robbins, my goodness, he doesn't have a credential in coaching, but nobody would balk at bringing him into an organization to maybe do some coaching and some mentoring. The other thing that's really popular are mentoring programs. A lot of these organizations, particularly the bigger ones that have regional offices in the Middle East, know that there's an aging population of experts within their organizations, and they really want to pass that expertise on to the next generation that are coming through. And so these organizations are looking for support from the likes of you and me as coaches and mentors to help set up those formal mentoring programs within the organization. So just to summarize, lots of opportunities. Coaching, being brought in as an external coach, maybe working with senior leaders, execs, or even lower down in the organization, but also great opportunities to help organizations develop a coaching culture or even set up formal mentoring programs and get mentoring programs going within an organization too.
I've been talking a lot about mentoring with purpose recently, and thank you, Neil, for contributing in there as well. I saw Charlotte working really hard getting all those links in there for us, but the Association of Business Mentoring too, and some stats that came out from a government research here a few months ago was the fact that the people that were mentored were 4 times more likely to be promoted within that company. So how wonderful is that? But the better stat was the mentors themselves were 5 times more likely to be promoted. So it's brilliant for both sides. It's not just a one-way traffic there, is it? And I think that's wonderful. So thank you so much for a really detailed answer. We've got loads of links in there for people to help as well. So if you're looking into this, then you can go to the websites first of all and see if what you've already got could be beneficial to you for working in the Middle East. But if not, you've then got the links to get yourself a qualification that will make a difference. Wonderful. Thank you for that one, Nicky. So Emma, I'm coming back to you. Let's focus you on there for question 5. We're doing well with timing, guys. So this point is where I usually prompt everyone to say, if you've got your own question, if you want to ask us something, whether you're on LinkedIn here or Crowdcast, please do put it in the chat and we'll hopefully have time for the coaches to answer those. If they don't know the answer, don't worry, there's no pressure. If you don't know, we just get someone on the next one that does. So that's how it works here on Ask the Coach. Right, 5. What are the realities of moving to and working in the MENA region? So we've expanded it a little bit there, but yeah, what are the realities from your point of view, Emma?
Well, it's a very real prospect for people. If you know, emerging markets, full stop, not just the Middle East, need good Western educated people, and that is just the way it is. If you take, for example, places like Saudi Arabia, they're building an enormous, great big community called NEOM. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this. And it's going to be a great big sustainable part of Saudi, which, you know, needs building, it needs infrastructure. There's all the things like topical issues such as environmental issues and things like that, which when you're building an entire city, therefore they need experts from around the world. the really great thing, and I think most people on here today are in the UK. Is that right, Angela?
Actually, no, a lot are in the Middle East as well.
Okay, fine. Well, hopefully you would agree then that the really brilliant thing about places like the UK, which is where we're largely sitting today, is that we've got a really good education system, and we encourage our young to go to work and things like that. So they don't just come out of education. Often with education, they've often got a sandwich placement, for example, and you become quite valuable because of that. And so our expertise, in other words, certainly with things like, if you think about the rise in electric cars and solar panels and wind power and all that kind of thing, it's all been developed in countries like the UK and Europe, and therefore going out to the Middle East, we've got a lot to offer. So as a recruiter, being able to take that expertise into these countries, because you know the clients, you know their competitors. If you've got a really niche recruitment business and you want to go and start doing and trading in the Middle East, the likelihood is that you will, with some real laser focus, pick up clients. I would say that there's a strong argument for having what we term boots on the ground. So people, and at the beginning of the conversation, Angela did a poll, how many people have actually been out to the Middle East? And one of the reasons and motivations around that was because there's lots of people that want to work in the Middle East, but they've never actually been there. And so there's some really big behavioural, cultural, and very serious differences between working in what's, in a very neat, ordered place like the UK or like Europe, in VAV working in the Middle East.
Neat and ordered at the moment in the UK.
Well, I know, but yeah, I'm with you, but you don't realise how easy it is to work in the UK until you've worked in an emerging market.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone would agree or disagree with that, but I certainly think if you can work in places like Saudi, you probably cracked it in recruitment. You can go anywhere, because don't forget, these countries are very young. I think, for example, Dubai, I don't know the number, but I want to hazard a guess, 45, 46 years old.
Yeah, but only sort of last 25 where you've really then got the push and the things. I mean, that's nothing, is it?
Absolutely. So, they're learning lots still, and their economy is growing, and it always, I don't know, I'm so impressed every time I go back to different countries in the MENA region, how different things look even 6 months later. And so it's so transient, it's so quick. You've got to have your finger on the pulse. So, things change, and people will be able to say to me, oh, Emma, that's not correct anymore because that changed last week. Or you can't drive down that road anymore because it's now a housing estate or something else. And you're like, oh, wow, that happened overnight. So there's lots of, you've got to be really, really laser focused. And if you are, and if you've got something really incredible to give, you probably are going to make work. You're probably going to make money, and you're probably going to be able to set up your business out there. Just don't rest on your laurels. Don't think that just because you're British, you're going to get business, because you're absolutely not. You've got to prove your worth. And, again, going back to and thinking about what Matt said earlier about and Nicky, the cultural aspects of things. Many people fail very quickly because they just can't get their head around the culture. There is a lot of business out there. There is absolutely no reason why you can't go out there and be successful having never been there. You've just got to put all your energy behind learning everything that there is to know.
Well, that's the same as any market in recruitment, isn't it? Whenever I did 5 different sectors, those first couple of months, all my energy went into market knowledge, trying to understand what I was talking about. And that's why we bring things like this. We've got Meet the Expert next week as well, where you get dedicated half hour of training. But from us, the coach point of view, here's your opportunity, yes, to speak to the people that know, that have been there, that have done it, and have got some insights. But I love the fact that you say, it can change very quickly in 6 months, and you have to keep on top of that. But I do think that's a sign of a good recruiter, that maybe every quarter you're updating all of your market knowledge, you're going back and gathering that things. Nicky, I saw you nodding a lot to that in there. What would you like to add?
I'm smiling because you're absolutely right, Emma. Things change really, really quickly. Whatever Middle Eastern, North African country you're talking about, because they are emerging, they are relatively new in terms of structure. One of the things that I found when I first, because I actually lived in Qatar for a period of time, and I lived in Dubai Marina as well at one point too. I think everybody's done Dubai Marina at some point.
And that changes so quickly. Yeah. I was there beginning of this year, but it's probably been 4 or 5 years since I've been there, and I didn't even recognise it. I was like, wow, it's changed so much.
Yeah. And one of the lovely things that I like about working out there in the Middle East, because we've got clients in a number of different countries within the Middle East, is that if you're looking to book a meeting with somebody, there's not a long lead up time. You know, if I reach out to somebody within a corporate organization here in Greece or even in the UK, I'm probably looking at booking a date in their diary at least a couple of weeks out. But in the Middle East, it's very different. You know, I would ring somebody up and ask if I could book a meeting with them. And very often their response is, oh, I'm very sorry, I can't meet with you today, but I can meet with you tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. And so there's a very short lead time to these meetings. So you can actually pack in a lot if you want to have boots on the ground like Emma and Matt have talked about, and actually get a feel for what's going on. Getting those boots on the ground, booking yourself out there for a week, you can actually go and see a lot of people within a very short period of time.
There's consultants watching this, they're sitting there going, what am I doing here? It takes so long to do everything. Everyone's open to networking, they'll book meetings straight away, they're happy to talk about it at social event. This sounds like the perfect place for recruiters, doesn't it? So I'm so glad that we've done this. So Matt, thank you so much for prompting this as well with JobAdder. Let's bring you on for the last question. Okay. No, question number 6 then, unless we'll check in a minute if there's any over on LinkedIn. In what way does the Middle East differ from other continents around the world? Because JobAdder obviously started in Australia, but you are pretty much worldwide, aren't you?
Yes, everywhere, which is great. I love time zones. They're my favourite. So look, if we do a macro to a micro in kind of these differences and similarities, one of the good things about what's going on in the Middle East at the moment is it's a growing market. So it's currently worth a little over the kind of 50 billion mark, and there's projections that it's going to be worth around about 86 billion by 2028. And that is the entirety of the market. We're looking at whether that be temp, perm, contractor, in-house. That's the entirety of that market. And to give you an idea, that looks the UK is worth about 141 billion. So there's it's not the same as our market. Ours is a very mature market, but again, to give you an idea of that, what that looks like is 80% of the jobs in the UK will actually go through an agency and 20% are filled in-house. In the Middle East, that can vary country to country, but you're looking around about a 50 to 60% go through agencies. But that's still a real healthy number when you think of the amount of work that is out there. They're also diversifying massively. People think of the Middle East and they think oil and gas, right? And that is far from it. There's infrastructure, telecoms, there's just IT, it's just everything, right? But there's this view of, oh, I go to the Middle East, I'm going to work in oil and gas, and that's just not the case. What is it? A lot of the brands that you would hear of here are over there as well. So you see, in terms of agency-wise, if you're looking to go out with somebody, your Randstad, your Michael Page, Hayes, Adecco, Manpower, Legis are all got offices out there if you're looking for that. As Emma was saying earlier, that if you don't want to stump up that check that says, look, here's 30k for my yearly rent, you get somebody to do that for you, absolutely do that.
Mhm.
But there's, you know, it's a growing market, but some of the kind of real big differences actually come in the minutiae of the detail, and it's the little things that people often miss out, which is really common to have your photo on your CV out there in a lot of these countries. It's still very common for, so don't be surprised when job adverts ask for a specific gender because of where they're working, or if they're asking for an age or a certain nationality. That is still very common within the Middle East, depending on where you're working and the role that you're going to be working in. But also, and this touches a bit on what the others are saying, is if you're going to go to these markets, if you're going to go to these regions, do your research, right? So just like everywhere else, get some of the basics around Arabic, Farsi, maybe Hebrew. Although a lot of these countries, they speak English from high school, it's taught to them. If you're going to move there, understand that Arabic is probably the most common language spoken out there. My Arabic is very rusty, but they appreciate it a lot when you make the effort, just like many other countries. And again, what people also don't, what differs in the Middle East often is and please correct me, Emma or Nicky, if I'm wrong here, but Saudi, for instance, has a minimum wage. That's absolutely in place. But there also are laws around, and I'm very conscious on time, so I'm whistle stop to this. There are also laws around you have to have so many Saudis to expats, depending on to what industries you're in. So be very mindful of who you're representing into. That, you know, it is its own market. It's got its own wonderful eccentricities and differences, but that's what makes it such a vibrant market, and what I think is a great place to be doing business. But just really understand that the nuances of doing your job is, yes, it's a growth market like many other places. It's a melting pot for all these things, but just understanding, you know, those nuances around, again, photos on CVs or salaries or who you can place is going to give you a massive leg up into that. And it comes back to that thing of go and speak to people because they'll tell you. Go and ask people, you know, out there. They're very, very open culture. So, you know, they're very open to you speaking to them, especially in these networking events. They are just everywhere. You can network everywhere. So it's a great place to be doing business at the moment, and it's only going to grow over the next 5 years. It's got massive growth potential and predictions.
Well, that's what's great to hear, because everyone's starting to look at the moment where is the growth likely to be. And I think we were all a bit shocked when China went downwards, because we always assumed that would always be a growth market. So the past couple of years that we've had economically has really thrown everything up in the air. So to identify an area that is going to continue to grow, that they're really only just starting from the recruitment industry point of view. And of course, we've got so much that we can share and develop and to help. Then it should be on everyone's radar, really, shouldn't it? If they're looking to work globally, then it should be on their radar. Definitely. Okay, let's bring everyone back. That was our last question. Thank you so much. I'll get there as well. Wonderful. Let's click on the button that tells us that we've done that answering as well. Look at that. Oh, 2 minutes left. Perfect. You do it from there. Okay, so one final thought from each of you then about your experiences of working in the Middle East. Nicky, let's come to you first. What's your final thought?
A final thought on working in the Middle East is just the friendliness, the openness, the hospitality that you experience, and you want to reciprocate that hospitality and that friendliness as well. Yeah, it's a great place to work, or even bring your business to. It really is.
Wonderful. Emma?
I'd just say go for it. If you're a recruiter, you want to work in an emerging market that's exciting, you've got a lot of energy, you fancy a change, just do it.
Go for it. Well, we've put all the links into the chat here, so hopefully people will be able to reach out to you as well and to get your insights even further. Matt, our wonderful sponsors, JobAdder, let's give you the final thought.
Do you know what mine is going to be? It's actually just going to back up Nicky, because I think the whole culture there revolves around food and the hospitality and feeding people and going out to eat, drink. I once made the mistake there of saying I was hungry, let's get some lunch. And somebody took me back to their house with their family, and I was like, and they've become lifelong friends. So just be very open to things is what I'd say. Be open to their friendship, their knowledge, their sharing things. Just be prepared to be fed.
Love that. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for all your contributions. We're here every 2 weeks, so if you follow the Recruiting Gym, you'll get reminded when we're back again. And everyone have a wonderful weekend and enjoy your food. Bye-bye.
Thanks, team.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.